The film begins with a man who looks like he's in pain. He is holding a knife with trembling hands. Slowly, he drags himself towards a hut where, all of a sudden, he thrusts the knife into. After he takes out the knife, the pain proves unbearable, and he screams in agony. Through the pain, he drags himself towards the lantern-lit hut. Just then, his daughter named Tantri arrives there and implores him to stop. She falls on her knees and grabs his leg to stop him from harm. But despite her protests, he persists while weeping and then plunges the knife into his shoulder. When Tantri questions his actions, he begins reciting a prayer for her protection. However, a malevolent presence looms behind him, compelling him to take desperate measures. As soon as the prayer ends, he takes one last look at his daughter. Still weeping and wailing, he picks up the nearby lantern and drops it on the ground. This results in a huge fire that eventually envelops him and takes his life. The scene shifts to years later, where we see Tantri in a bus. It seems that she was just remembering this tragic incident as she gasps awake. Startled, she looks around, scaring the nearby passengers as well. Her gaze then drifts down to her burned arms. The scars remind her of that tragic night. Soon she arrives to settle into her school's dormitory. There outside, she is suddenly startled by a cry for help. Getting inside, she is greeted by the notice board containing the picture of a boy and a girl. They seem to be missing since there are inscriptions of wishes that they come back safely. Just then, two girls arrive there and try to strike up a conversation, but the scared Tantri just nods her head and rushes off. Upon reaching her room door, she feels a demonic hand on her shoulder, only to realize it's the same two students from earlier. They inspect her room, and one of them inquires if she's alone. Introducing themselves as Faye and Astha, they bid her to take care and enjoy herself before departing. Faye looks rather cheerful. However, Astha, on the other hand, is more reserved and colder. Later, while Tantri is cleaning her room, she comes across a photograph featuring 5 individuals, with the words "Hate You" inscribed on the back. Accidentally dropping the photo, it slides beneath her bed. As she reaches for it, she's startled to see a ghostly figure on the other side, only for it to vanish in an instant. Meanwhile, back in her room, Astha is texting her uncle Jamal when she hears peculiar noises. Turning around, she is horrified to discover herself seemingly with a glass. During dinner, Tantri inquires if anyone else has experienced anything strange. Faye seeks clarification, prompting Tantri to recount her unsettling observations since her arrival. She further probes if any similar incidents have occurred previously, leading them to disclose that 2 of their friends have gone missing since the previous year. They are talking about the same boy and girl whose pictures were pasted on the notice board. Astha reveals that Aram was taken away by her father and disappeared, while Faye mentions that their friend Luki is suspected to have taken his own, as evidenced by a handwritten letter discovered in his locker. However, Astha notes that despite this assumption, Luki's body has never been found. Just then, near their table, a fight breaks out among 2 boys. One of them cautions the other about Aram, the missing girl's room, saying that he must not wander in without permission again. The boy, named Reza, then comes to sit on the same table as the girls, and Faye introduces him to Tantri, saying that she is a new student. Later, while Tantri is bathing, she suddenly feels a presence nearby. She cautiously looks around but finds no one, leaving her perplexed. However, unbeknownst to her, someone stands behind her. After finishing her bath, she quickly wears the towel and leaves the area with her things. However, she is unaware that a mysterious female ghost follows right behind her. Meanwhile, in her room, Faye is unsettled by strange voices emanating from her radio, akin to an ominous incantation. The voice creepily calls out, saying that she must come to her and resurrect her with blood. Terrified, the woman warily looks around. Just as the hairs on her neck stand on end, her room door creaks open of its own accord. Stepping into the dimly lit space to investigate, she fails to catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure darting behind another door. Before she can react, her room door slams shut, trapping her outside. After a frantic struggle, she manages to unlatch it and rushes back into the safety of her room, only to feel a chilling presence lingering outside her window. She slowly approaches the window to look out. As she moves the curtain aside, she sees a face akin to herself screaming, with blood dripping down its eyes. Shaken to the core, the woman quickly jumps back and falls on her back, screaming. On the other hand, Tantri finds solace in memories of her father. She is holding his picture, hugging it and crying as she remembers how he once spoke of a necklace left behind by her mother. She wears the same necklace around her neck to this day. Drifting into slumber with thoughts of her mother swirling in her mind, she suddenly finds herself transported to a surreal location. There, she encounters Luki, consumed by remorse as he pens the very letter discovered in his locker. A sinister chant, reminiscent of the one plaguing Faye, fills the air, sending shivers down her spine. In a disturbing turn, Luki is compelled by an unseen force to commit a grotesque act, plunging a tool into his ear. Terrified, he flees the room in a frenzy, his screams echoing through the stillness, until he abruptly halts at the edge of a foreboding well. As he turns, the entity's voice echoes in Luki's mind, compelling him to believe in the spell. The mysterious voice says that only when he believes would the dark spell take effect. Despite Tantri's desperate attempts to intervene, Luki, under the entity's sway, grimly proceeds to take his own with a knife, before plummeting into the depths of the well. Tantri is jolted awake in her room, her heart pounding. She sighs deeply and rubs her face, only to discover blood staining her trembling hands. Following her strange dream later, Tantri stumbles upon Luki's decomposed remains at the bottom of the same well. Other students soon gather, and the authorities arrive too. There, Tantri sees the same boy who fought with Reza in the cafeteria, named Moss. She strangely feels his gaze upon her, and quickly departs from the eerie scene. In the meantime, Faye and Asta are visibly shaken. Faye recounts her harrowing experience from the previous night to her. Asta urges her friend to push the disturbing thoughts aside. Spotting Tantri nearby, Asta invites her to join them. She asks if it really was her who found Luki's body, and Tantri affirms. She reveals that she witnessed the grim sight in a haunting dream. Asta then broaches the sensitive topic, questioning if Tantri is sensitive to such things and possesses the ability to see unseen things. She says that if she can find Luki's body, could she also uncover the whereabouts of Aram? The group then decides to go visit Aram's house to test out their hypothesis. Later, while the group is about to set off, Maz confronts Tantri, demanding to know how she came to locate Luki's remains. Tensions escalate as Reza steps in to defend Tantri, leading to a heated interaction between Mahiz and Reza. Asta intervenes, diffusing the tension and ushering Reza away. They drive towards Aram's deserted home. Peering through the windows, they ask Tantri if she can feel anything, but she comes up empty. After reaching the front door, Reza parks the car, and they all spread out to look for something that can point them in the direction of their lost friend. All except Tantri, who remains near the car. She sees the glass windows and nears them to peep inside the house. However, she is greeted by an apparition that startles Tantri, causing her to inadvertently break the glass and injure her hand. Reza rushes to her aid, summoning Faye, who quickly improvises a makeshift bandage with a scarf to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, Asta discovers an open door, signaling a possible entry point. As they venture inside, they are greeted by the sight of ransacked drawers and open cupboards. Reza suspects foul play, suggesting that Mahiz might be behind the disturbance, either searching for something or erasing evidence. As they explore further, Tantri becomes entranced, guided by the spirit of a young girl. Following her ethereal lead, Tantri discovers a room. As she steps in, the bed slams to the side ominously. It unveils a cryptic symbol etched onto the floor. Kneeling before it, Tantri is drawn into a trance, wherein a mysterious book materializes before her. Meanwhile, Faye notices Tantri's absence. Growing concerned, they all look for her. Asta finally finds her, and as she witnesses Tantri immersed in a strange ritual, reciting incantations from the enigmatic book before her, she quickly calls out the others. Sensing the urgency, Asta intervenes, gently placing her hand on Tantri's shoulder, snapping her friend out of her trance-like state. As they gather in the room, they come to a chilling conclusion. They've been ensnared by a malevolent curse, with Aram serving as the unseen hand behind their torment. Poor, terrified Faye begins freaking out and gets into an argument with Reza. However, Asta stops them. She says that instead of bickering among themselves, they all should seek answers. They should question how they can break free from this malevolent entity's grip. Then all three decide to complete the spell since they already have everything at hand, so that they may be free. Hearing all this, Tantri insists she's not involved in all this. Hence, she would not get swept up with their spell. But Asta challenges her, highlighting how Tantri's involvement has been pivotal in uncovering the curse's secrets. She asserts that Tantri is the chosen one, tasked with ending the curse, once and for all. Though initially skeptical, Tantri is persuaded by Faye's plea to attempt the ritual. Reluctantly, she agrees, acknowledging that they have nothing to lose by trying. Distributing pieces of glass, Tantri leads the group in a grim ceremony, their intertwined hands drawing blood that spills onto the symbol etched on the floor. Entering a trance-like state, Tantri begins reciting the incantation, and her companions follow suit. In a chilling twist, the entity responsible for their plight manifests before them, revealing that their actions have unwittingly triggered the curse's activation. It declares Tantri and her companions as its chosen vessels, bound to serve the dark forces. The entity offers a grim bargain. It will lift the curse and its spell if Tantri agrees to accompany it. Terrified and desperate, Tantri pleads for mercy, questioning the entity's insatiable thirst for life. She cries as she begs it to stop. Unmoved, the entity asserts its claim over Tantri's very being, vowing to seize everything she holds dear until nothing remains. On their way back, Asta asks Reza to drop her off at home. She says that she would come back to the dormitory on her own. She gets down and enters her house rather discreetly. After they drop her off, the group talk about the lingering mysteries surrounding their ordeal. Tantri questions why Aram's malevolent spell seemed to cease with Luki, who ultimately met a tragic end. Reza nonchalantly dismisses her concerns, suggesting it's a fortunate turn of events. However, Faye challenges his indifference, reminding him of the imminent danger they face. Meanwhile, Asta, in a seemingly suspicious act, cuts off a piece of her sleeping uncle's shirt and plucks hair from his beard. Startled awake, her uncle smiles and questions why she hasn't been visiting. He says that he feels lonely in her absence. However, his demeanor darkens upon noticing the scissors in her hand, leading to a horrifying result. He wrenches away the scissor from her and throws it down. Then he bends the poor, helpless girl over the table and disgustingly has his way with her. Amidst the ordeal, Asta remembers her traumatic past of how he would often really, he should be the one getting cursed. On the other side, as Reza drops off Faye and Tantri, he is stricken with terror upon spotting the entity, lurking behind his car via the rearview camera. Reacting swiftly, Faye and Tantri rush to his aid, only to find Reza under attack by the entity. Yet, as quickly as it appeared, the entity vanishes into thin air upon their approach. Concerned, they inquire about Reza's well-being, but he brushes off their concerns. Insisting that he's fine, the man drives off coldly. Back in her room filled with palpable fear, Faye trembles and weeps in front of her mirror. All of a sudden, a menacing demonic hand inches closer, launching a brutal assault that cuts the scene to darkness. On the other side, Asta lies on her sofa in the living room, crying herself to sleep. Meanwhile, Tantri goes to the bathroom to wash up. Inside, once again she slips into a trance and finds herself inexplicably transported to Asta's home. There, she bears witness to a ghastly sight. Asta's uncle is strangled by his own oxygen pipe, with the entity's ominous presence looming in a nearby mirror. Not to sound brutal, but this sight is quite satisfying. Startled and bewildered, Tantri is abruptly whisked back to her own abode, now clutching the oxygen pipe in her trembling hands. Determined to confront the escalating darkness, Tantri confronts Asta, demanding the cursed book back. When questioned, Tantri cryptically implies that she knows what Asta has done. However, both Asta and Faye staunchly refuse to give up the book. It seems that they just used the book to cast a spell and take out Uncle. Their defiance is unyielding despite Tantri's warnings. Unable to contain herself, Faye reveals that Asta's uncle had been her since childhood. Depressed, the poor girl had even attempted to take her. Faye's revelation about Asta's past pregnancy and abortion adds another layer of complexity to the tense situation. As Tantri refuses to back down from her demand for the cursed book, Asta grows increasingly defensive. Despite Tantri's genuine concern for Asta's well-being, Asta rebuffs her assistance, asserting her independence and insisting that Tantri leave. Faced with Asta's resistance, Tantri stands her ground, adamant that she won't just let the book remain in their hands, and if they do not give the book back, she won't help them anymore. Asta, undeterred by Tantri's resolve, firmly asserts that she doesn't require Tantri's aid and urges her to depart. With emotions running high and tensions escalating, Tantri realizes that her attempts to reason with Asta are in vain. Reluctantly, she gives the two girls one last look and leaves, knowing that their confrontation is far from over. Later that night, while Tantri is trying to sleep, a spectral figure materializes in her room and pleads for her assistance. The scene ominously cuts. The following day, Tantri is in the cafeteria when the three people arrive and sit on a nearby table. Unable to keep looking at them, she takes her lunch and goes out to eat. Following her, Moaz also leaves and confronts Tantri outside. He probes her about her apparent exclusion from their social circle and says that they are all disgusting people who do bad deeds. When asked what they do, Moaz broaches the sensitive topic of Aram's disappearance, attributing blame to Reza and Luki. Tantri, taken aback by Moaz's accusations, presses for further details. To her shock, Moaz reveals a disturbing truth. It turns out that Aram fell to the predatory behavior of Reza and Luki, who engaged in a despicable wager to exploit Reza perpetrated a heinous act of betrayal by distributing imagery of Aram throughout the college community. This revelation shocks the girl. She says that Astha should have been understanding and should have helped Aram since they are both victims of such exploitation. Mahas tells Tantri that this is why he broke up with Astha. Meanwhile, a sudden and alarming incident unfolds as Astha begins to choke, leaving everyone stunned. Their shock deepens when a piece of glass inexplicably emerges from her throat, a chilling omen of the dark forces at play. Despite the unsettling events, Faye suggests they return home, but Astha insists they continue. Mahas shows Tantri some photos he took, revealing a chilling detail. There is a recurring spectral figure lurking beside her in each image, who is none other than Aram. Shocked by this revelation, Tantri grapples with the implications of Aram's spectral presence. After lunch, Astha is going back to her room when she sees Tantri sitting with Mahas. The woman is immediately consumed by jealousy over Tantri's closeness with Mahas. Later, accompanied by Faye, Astha intrudes into Tantri's room. There, she proceeds to take a photo of Tantri and snip a lock of her hair from the bathroom. When Faye attempts to intervene, Astha scolds her, saying that she is her friend and that Faye should support her actions. Outside, Mahis unveils the eerie photos of Aram to Tantri, who is startled to see the consistent presence of an entity named Surgana looming behind her in each picture. Tantri, shaken by this revelation, reveals the entity's identity to Mahas. The scene then shifts to Astha, who is immersed in a dark ritual involving Tantri's belongings. Faye desperately tries to intervene, urging Astha to open the door. Suddenly, the door swings open, revealing a visibly enraged Astha, seemingly overtaken by a sinister force. In a horrifying turn of events, Astha violently yanks Faye's hair, causing her to scream out in agony before slamming the door shut. Faye, in a desperate attempt to escape, flees the scene, but Surgana relentlessly pursues her. Reza, witnessing the unfolding horror, is left in shock as Faye is lifted into the air by an unseen force. Surgana confronts Faye, uttering incantations that compel her to gruesomely gouge out her eyes with her hands. Meanwhile, Tantri confides in Mahas about Aram's book, revealing Astha's desperate search for it and the sinister motivations behind her invitation to Aram's house. It turns out that the group didn't go to Aram's house to look for clues, but rather to search for the book. The pattern there was also created by none other than Astha. Mahas presses for information about the book's current whereabouts, but Tantri is suddenly overcome by a trance, finding herself transported to a remote location. There, she is confronted with a harrowing scene. 5 disgusting men are a helpless woman. Their is crying out for help. Shockingly, the woman turns to Tantri with a chilling smile, revealing herself as Surgana. Witnessing the scene unfold, Tantri is both scared and disgusted. She quickly hides while crying for the unfortunate girl. All of a sudden, the place changes, and she finds herself in a forest before the same woman. The latter is writing something in a spell book and throws it down. Then she slices her hand and pours her blood over the book. Black smoke starts to arise from the page. Just then, the book catches fire and the woman begins to levitate, delivering a haunting prophecy. She says that she is cursing the 5 sinners along with their entire lineage. Surgana foretells of a chosen one who will become her devil's slave, cursed to torment the lives of the 5 sinners and their descendants, until their eventual demise. With a chilling proclamation, Surgana seals the fates of all involved in her dark vendetta. As Surgana ascends higher, her chant intensifies until her body is consumed by flames. Suddenly, Tantri jolts awake in her room, shaken by the vivid and horrifying vision. She finds a worried Mahas nearby, who is shaking her to get back to her senses. When he queries her about her distress, Tantri reveals the traumatic truth. Surgana was by multiple individuals. In her vision, just before Surgana immolated, she witnessed the vengeful spirit inscribing the names of her assailants in the book discovered at Aram's house. It included the shocking revelation that her own grandfather was among them. Mahas speculates that the curse, dormant for a time, may have reactivated when Aram, in her despair, heard the whispers of the spell once more, seeking vengeance on Luki. He suggests that the apparition of Aram is reaching out to Tantri for aid, urging them to locate her whereabouts. To give her moral support, he even promises to look for Aram together despite not being involved in the curse. Meanwhile, Surgana materializes behind Astha, attributing her presence to the summoning of the spell. In Aram's house, Tantri and Mahas investigate further. As Mahas ventures inside, Surgana appears behind Tantri, poised to strike. However, before she can attack, an unseen force shields Tantri from harm. As Mahas returns, Tantri senses Surgana's presence and alerts him. Suddenly, the windows shatter. In a bid to protect Tantri, Mahas shields her, and they both bend down to the ground. However, unfortunately, a glass slices his neck, and he slumps down. Desperate to save him, Tantri moves him to discover a glass shard piercing his neck. Overwhelmed with grief and fear, Tantri pleads with Mahas not to leave her alone, tears streaming down her face in a heart-wrenching plea. Meanwhile, on the other side, Astha also senses the tragedy that has befallen Mahas and breaks down in tears. Back in Aram's house, Tantri hears her desperate pleas for help once more. She then sees her ghost and follows its guidance to a specific room. However, she finds herself unexpectedly transported to Aram's house in the past, where a disturbing scene unfolds before her eyes. Aram is seen engaged in a ritual, but her grandfather intervenes, thwarting her efforts and confining her to another room. He tearfully apologizes, explaining that he's restraining Aram to prevent her from harming her. Suddenly, Surgana's sinister presence permeates the room, seizing control and hurling Aram's grandfather against the ceiling. His blood drips down and Aram greedily consumes it. Coming out of her trance, Tantri is stunned to discover that Aram is still alive and tied in the same room. Rushing to her aid, she attempts to free her, only to be confronted by Astha, who holds Mahas at knife point. Tantri notices Astha wearing Aram's necklace, realizing that she holds vital knowledge about the unfolding events. Desperate to prevent further bloodshed, she implores Astha to reconsider, reminding her of the love she shares with Mahas. Despite Tantri's pleas, Astha, seemingly possessed, mercilessly plunges the sharp object into Mahas and throws him to the ground. Regaining consciousness, Astha is horrified by her actions, but she is once again overtaken by Surgana's dark influence. Compelled to Astha tragically ends, succumbing to the malevolent force that plagues them all. Before long, Surgana takes control of Aram's body. She breaks free from her restraints and directs her curses towards Tantri, warning her of the consequences should she attempt to break the curse through her descendants. Despite Surgana's ominous threats, Tantri, with a heavy heart, takes the knife used by Astha and delivers a fatal blow to Aram's heart. In her final moments, Aram expresses gratitude to Tantri for freeing her from the torment of the curse. 1 week later, Tantri returns to the dormitory to a somber revelation. Riza has been arrested, resulting in a tragic loss of life. As she grapples with the aftermath, her warden hands her a replacement frame for her father's photograph. This triggers a poignant memory for Tantri, recalling her father's sacrifice for her. He had recounted the story of her birth, where her mother selflessly chose to save Tantri's life at the cost of her own. In a touching moment, Tantri and her father recite a familiar prayer together, revealing its significance as the same prayer he uttered before his untimely demise at the beginning of the movie. Afterwards, Tantri makes the decision to rid herself of the cursed book by tossing it into the flames of a fireplace. Faye's struggles continue in a psychiatric facility where she is haunted by the relentless echoes of the spell. Her torment intensifies as her eyes begin to bleed, filling the air with her anguished screams. Meanwhile, Riza, ensnared by the insidious influence of the spell, succumbs to despair and takes his in a devastating act of sin. On her journey back home, Tantri is confronted with a chilling realization as she finds the cursed book inexplicably back in her possession. Her shock deepens as she discovers that everyone aboard her bus has met a grim fate, leaving her surrounded by death. In a final ominous scene, we see a veiled woman standing in Aram's room, her identity shrouded in mystery. As she turns to reveal her blood-red eyes, the implication of a dark and unending cycle becomes unmistakable.